Hey, y'all. My name is Shane Sams. Thank you so much for listening to my podcast today. This is the place where you can find the world's best authors, entrepreneurs, and experts out there. Great conversations where you can learn best practices that can take whatever you're doing to the next level. I've got a fun guest for y'all today. On today's episode of the podcast, my guest is Anne Beiler. She is the founder of Auntie Anne's Pretzels. I had the great pleasure to meet Anne at one of the events I was speaking at. Me and Jocelyn were there. It was in Tampa, Florida. We were at a big event, thousands of people, an awesome event that we do called Life Surge. Life Surge is a Christian business event. It's a Christian worship event. We're out there. We've got great music. We've got great speakers, and we're traveling all around the country with Life Surge this year. And backstage, we got to meet Auntie Anne, and she just instantly endeared herself to us. She was like the most kind, loving, just amazing woman you had ever met. And I'll never forget it. Anne, when we were heading back to the hotel, we were in an SUV, and they were taking some of the speakers back. And me and Jocelyn got in the very back seat, and Anne like squished in between us. And we just had a great chat and a great time. We took a selfie. And when we got back to the hotel room, I was like, man, that's Auntie Anne. That's the person that made all those pretzels. Like, think about Auntie Anne's pretzels, man. You can't go into a mall, a store. Like, you're probably smelling the pretzels right now as you're listening to this podcast. And on top of her being an amazing person, she has one of the most absolutely incredible life stories, entrepreneur journeys that you will ever hear on any podcast. On today's show, we're going to talk about her life before Auntie Anne's Pretzels, how she grew up in an Amish community, about her life before she became an entrepreneur, and some of the tragedies along the way that really shaped who she is. We're going to talk about how she launched her very first Auntie Anne's Pretzels in a farmer's market, and how within just a couple years, she had grown it to dozens and dozens of stores, and how she would eventually sell it in 2005 for hundreds of millions of dollars. You are going to be so enriched and motivated and inspired and happy that you listened to this podcast today. And it ain't got nothing to do with me, y'all. It's all about Auntie Anne. So wherever you're listening from, pour yourself a cup of coffee or maybe a mason jar of sweet tea. Sit back and relax and enjoy my interview with Auntie Anne Beiler. Three, two, one. Hi, Anne.
Hey, Shane. How are you?
I am great. I am feeling healthy and strong and excited and just pumped to talk to you today.
Well, it's a great day. It's a great day.
We've had to reschedule this a few times for some unforeseen circumstances. Yeah.
That's life, right?
That is life. First of all, I wanted to say, Jocelyn told me that your movie is full speed ahead. Is that correct?
That's correct. We just made the announcement.
Congratulations.
Go. Thanks for that. Yeah. Very exciting.
Awesome. So what are you going to be like totally involved in the movie making process, or do they just get the story and then they get like take it over?
No, that's the good part about the group that we're working with out in Nashville. We'll be involved in the every step of the way as far as the storyline, the actors and all those things. But of course, they take the lead and then we just do the approvals. So
that's crazy.
I'm happy about that. So hopefully the story stays in line with our real story, and I believe that it will.
We had a guy in our he's from our hometown, and when he was like, I don't remember how old Travis was, but he was like 13 or 14, and he got meningitis and he went blind. But he kept playing football all through high school. He was like the center on the football team. And he would just go out there and they would have calls to help him find people. And he would use his senses and he would block people and stuff. And it was cool because we got to see them do like a biopic movie about him. And they filmed it here at our local high school. And the process was just wild, watching all these people run around with cameras and stuff like that. So I'd say you're in for a ride, you know?
I think so. I'm anticipating that. I'm not sure what the ride's going to feel like, but I know it's going to be a ride, a wild
That's
one.
Right. Well, let's talk about what got you to this point where they're making movies about you. Okay. So like, of course, you know, you are the founder of Auntie Anne's Pretzels. And it's crazy how like cultural iconic that brand that you created is. Like when we first met you and Joe told us that you were going to be there, we're like, there's a real Auntie Anne? Like, really? Like, that's a real thing? And like, because if you've ever been into a mall or an airport or anywhere in America, like, you know what that, like, if you say that, you know what it smells like immediately, right?
Hey, listen, yeah, I found my way to Auntie Anne's stores. I knew they were in the mall, but I didn't know where they were, like what location. And I would start to smell, and I would just follow my nose, and it always took me there.
Amazing. It's incredible. And it was just such a pleasure to meet you and see how real you were and how amazing you were, and just to learn more about, your story. So let's just go back a little bit, like maybe right before Auntie Anne's came to be, right? Pretzels.
Mm-hmm.
What was life like then? What were you doing? Have you always been an entrepreneur, or was this something that just this was a pivot in your life or a fork in the road? What was happening before you started that business?
Well, it was certainly a fork in the road, and it was something that we did not see coming. Let me take you back a little bit to my background, which is I grew up in an Amish farm in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. And mom and dad, old order Amish with horse and buggies. But as a toddler, they went on to what we call the black car Amish. So I grew up in the Amish community, but my mom and dad had a black car. My dad could farm with tractors instead of horses. And we had electricity in the home. So in that regard, we looked like Amish, but I knew we were not Amish. Now, people looking
right.
on would never have noticed. So anyway, growing up in that culture, Shane, it was a very, I want to say, simplistic. It was there were boundaries for us. There was a hard work ethic. I worked with my mom in the kitchen. There were 8 of us kids. And at an early age, I had allergies, which back in the day, anything that looked like it or seemed like an allergy, they would call it hay fever. So I knew that mom and dad knew that I couldn't work outside in the fields or in the gardens a whole lot because it would bother me. And so I became mom's helper in the kitchen. Then I learned how to cook. And if you want a really good Amish meal, Shane, if you'll just bring your family on down to my home, I'd be happy to cook you. I will Amish definitely. Meal.
I'm going to hold you to that one. I'm going to hold you to that one.
It's not gourmet, I can promise you that, but it is good. But so during those years, I learned how to bake and cook, and mom and dad went to market to Philadelphia 3 nights a week. And on Thursday night after school, that was the only time my mom was not in the kitchen when I got home from school, because her and dad went to market. Mom would have a list of cakes and pies that she wanted me to bake. And I was 11 and 12 years old. And I remember looking at that list that she had put on the kitchen counter, and she would call me Annabetts. And she said, Annabetts, tonight I want you to make whatever, the amount of pies, cakes, cookies, whatever it was that they needed to sell. So I ended up making 50, 60, 70, or 80 pies and cakes all by myself in the basement of our home. And my dad had bought a really, really big pizza oven so that I could bake at least 60 pies at one shot.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy. But it was
all from scratch. And that, Shane, there was many lessons at that point in my life. It was the lesson of, entrepreneurs, I believe the successful ones do what they don't feel like doing. Mm-hmm. And I learned during that time and on the farm life, but particularly during that time, I remember crying as I went down the steps. I can remember that feeling right now as I'm telling you this. I did not want to do that by myself, but I did. Why? Because I wanted to please mom and dad. And I knew, and it wasn't like this big hurrah. Thank you so much, Annabeth, for doing this. You're doing a great job. Not verbal, but I knew when I got to market on Saturday, I would go with my dad. And he was so proud of me. And he would tell every customer that was buying a cake or a pie that my daughter made these pies and cakes. And I could feel the pride, even though he never really said that. So I'm saying all that to say my background, just work ethic. We also learned how to play together. We also knew how to sit together at the table 3 times a day, not 3 times a week, but morning, noon, and dinner time. So the disciplines is really what set me up, Shane,
for success.
Without that, I would never have been able to accomplish and do what we did with Auntie Anne's. Fast forward just a little bit. My husband and I got married. I was young, 19. It's what every little Amish girl wants to do, marry a good-looking guy, Amish guy. It had to be an Amish guy. And the day I met Jonas and married him 3.5 years later, I knew that day I had hit the jackpot, because what I knew about Jonas was he was a hard worker. and he loved God more than he loved me, and that's pretty important in any marriage. And so from that point on, we were happily married. Our dream and our goal was just to simply, have our very own family, be involved in the community.
What did he do? What did he do at the time? Was he just a farmer, or what was he?
He grew up on a farm as well, but he ended up being a car mechanic because at the age of 16, his dad wanted to buy him a horse and buggy, which is typical of Amish families. At 16, you get your own horse and buggy. And he told his dad, I don't want to be Amish. I don't want a horse and buggy. And his dad said, well, if you want a car, then you're going to have to find you a car, and I can't help you do that. My husband went to the junkyard, found a 1950 Chevrolet, and he brought it home, towed it home somehow, and he fixed that car up, and he became the body man in the county. He was just a great body man. Ended up working many years later in Austin on really high-end cars at Cox Collision in Austin, Texas. So that was he loved to do that. But he was always was very inquisitive, always figured things out. And today he can fix anything you will ask him to fix. But that part of his mind is what really helped him later on in life. A few years later, in 1974, we had two daughters by that time, Luana and Angela, and we were living the dream, Shane. We were living the dream. We were in this spiritual high. We got to know Jesus. We got to experience him in a relationship rather than in just a religion. And we were just so excited about life. And I always wanted to be a good girl. And my dad never had to spank me. I mean, I guess I was a good girl. I don't know. And so that was my goal, to be a good girl and to please God and to be a good wife. And in 1975, all of that changed for us. And it was September the 8th. It was a beautiful fall morning. And our sweet baby girl, she was 19 months and 12 days. And Angela Joy was walking to my mom and dad's house. We lived out in the country they lived on a farm. We had a double wide trailer at that time. And she would always come see my mom. And that particular morning, Angie made her way to my mom's house. And my sister, who was driving a Bobcat, did not see Angie. And as my sister backed the Bobcat up and she went to move it forward, she saw Angie's lifeless body in front of her.
Oh, my God.
So that changed my life, obviously.
Your sister, did she come running? What happened?
She ran away.
Oh, God. Yeah.
They found her later in just a pile of weeds in the farm somewhere. And my dad came running with Angie's body in his arms, just running and wailing. And just all he could say was, I think she's dead. I think she's dead. And I it's traumatic. You can't, to go back to that. I remember it clearly, but it's really, really difficult to explain.
Yeah, for sure.
But from that point on, as Angie made her ascent into heaven that day, and I knew that's where she was, I began my gradual descent into a world of pain and emotional pain and spiritual confusion. Because remember, I wanted to be a good girl. I thought I was a good girl. I was doing all the right thing. Not perfect, but I was a pretty good girl, pretty good wife.
Yeah.
And so spiritually confused, the first question we ask when tragedy strikes, well, I don't know why we do this, but we do. Why God? Why did you let this happen to me? And what I know today, Shane, is that life is hard. God is good. But at that time I was confused and I thought that life is good and that God was harsh. And so feeling like, why did this happen to me? I went into this place of spiritual confusion. My husband and I drifted apart, stayed together in the marriage. The Great Wall of China was the emotional wall. It was huge. We could no longer connect. A few months later, I found myself going to my pastor's office and for help and for comfort. And before I left his office that day, he took advantage of me and made me promise not to tell anyone. And because if I told anyone, nobody would believe me. And so, wow, that was the beginning then of 7 years. I say that he took me into the dark world. And I found, I learned how to navigate in that world and existed there. I survived and existed basically. So we had another baby. So I was trying to be a mom with two little girls, and trying to be a wife and living a double life, and got into this sexually abusive relationship and stayed there. And I really, truly felt like there was no way out.
The story is incredible, and your books are incredible. We and Jocelyn have went through them, and like the whole thing's amazing. And like you see so many people, like this 7-year period where you were like in the dark world. Like you see so many people go into that, and like they don't come out of it. And you know, and we're going through these valleys. The valleys sometimes just seemed endless. Like, what was the spark of hope or the moment that pulled you out of that? Like, was it like a friend or a colleague, or was it your business idea? Because Auntie Anne's had not even been created yet. You know, like what pulled you out of that 7-year valley? Like, what ended it?
I was so desperate, and I weighed 90 pounds. I was so angry. I hated who I'd become. I believed I was unlovable, unchangeable, and unforgivable. And one day, I mean, I cried my way through those 7 years, always asking God to deliver me. I mean, isn't that what we do when we're in trouble? We ask God to help us and deliver us, and he didn't. And so I'm mad at God. And I was on my knees one day, and God just said to me, when I say said, there was this huge, he interrupted my thoughts, and he said, go tell Jonas, my husband, what's going on in your life. And I call it the new view of confession. James 5:16, confess your faults one to another and you'll be healed. And I believe that healing is a relational healing between me and my fellow man, my husband, my children. Be real with them. And so, man, I mean, fear and trembling, I did. And I went out to his body shop, and I made a very 2-sentence confession. And the look in his eyes, there was no hug, there was no forgiveness exchange. There was nothing exchanged except the look in his eyes said to me that, wow, he's going to divorce me. And that's what I was afraid of. And I turned and walked away. But that story's in my book. And Jonas and I are married 53 years, going on our 54th years. So Jonas was challenged at that time, which I didn't know. He fell on his knees and just was completely devastated. And he was challenged on his knees. If you will love your wife like I love you, there's hope for your marriage. And that story's in my book. And we could spend the next 30 minutes. I know that we want to talk about Auntie Anne's. And you know what I do want to say is that single, hard, difficult, humiliating, I was so filled with shame, confession to my husband. I had no idea that would change the trajectory of our lives. The power of being real, the power of confession. Secrets kill you. You're going to die. Yeah. Like
you can't erase a secret that you haven't told someone. Like it just stays in you. And every minute that you wake up, because I have a saying that I tell people all the time, greatness flows through your lips and your fingertips. And like, if you don't let those things come out of you through words and writing, it will just eat you alive inside, you know?
Absolutely. And that's what was happening to me. And so, again, my husband being a very quiet, kind, hardworking, loving father and husband, saw us through that time. And we ended up going for marriage counseling. And so Jonas, being inquisitive and his mind always working, trying to figure things out, he was thinking, how can this happen? How did this happen to me in my home without me knowing about it for 7 years? Nobody knew shame. That's the evil of secrets, like whether it's abuse or whatever it may be. The secrets, it's you can actually live a secret your whole life, and nobody will ever know. And
it's a prison the enemy holds you in, basically. It's the strongest walls he can put around you as a secret.
Absolutely. And what I say about confession, the new view of confession, it is the highest form of communication, because it lets you be real. It lets you be who you are, and you cannot be who you are unless you really verbalize and talk and communicate and open your life. You know, there's a verse in the Bible that says, walk in the light. You know, as he is in the light, and then we have fellowship, and then we are forgiven. So amazing. It's all about bringing our deeds into the light. So we began this journey with counseling, and Jonas got so intrigued, and we went to a counseling center in Akron, Ohio, many years later, and that's where he became very interested in counseling himself. And so he began that journey of online counseling. He became a pastoral counselor. Amazing. And just amazing. And so he wanted to counsel families free of charge. And so it's what he did. And guess what? When you do something free of charge, your bank account stays flat.
Yes, it does.
Literally.
Yes.
So one day I had the opportunity to work at a farmer's market in Lancaster County. And the guy asked me, do you want to manage my stand? I'm like, I'm still feeling, I'm not okay. I've come a long way. I did some things that kept us in the marriage. Jonas did some things, that we were intact and we were happily married after a few years of working together. Hard work is meaning counseling and all that. And so we got to that point. I said to him, hon, I really want you to be able to do what you've done. I mean, I honor you. I so respect you. I'm still grateful to this day that he kept not only my family together, but he kept me sane and took me to a place of healing. So I said, I'm going to go to work. And he said, well, we need some food on the table and so why don't you go to work and make the dough, and so I literally went to work. And
ironic there that he said, go make the dough. That's a little irony there for you. Go make some dough. All right. I think I can make some pretzel dough.
Again, it was not our plan. It was just what God put in our path, and it's what we did. So when I started Auntie Anne's at that time, I would say I was still pretty broken in many ways. My self-esteem was still pretty low, there was hardly any of that day, any of that. I didn't have that because I was still feeling very guilty and sort of weak and some shame. And not that he made me feel that way, but it was so deep. But what I had when we started Auntie Anne, Shane, is I had a great purpose. And the purpose was Jonas wanted to do free counseling. And in order to do that, I needed to make money so that he could actually do that. So when we started, we made $200 and some a week. And
was this at a farmer's market? You said you started making the pretzels just at a stand or something?
Correct.
Yeah.
Lancaster County, there are many farmers markets in Lancaster County. So it was, a stand in the market. And so I began making pretzels. There's a story behind that. The first day in business, I managed the store for about 7 months, and I was making $250 a week. And Jonas we were both happy because he could do marriage counseling to his heart's content. And he did it in the community, in the church, and some of it out of our home and wherever. And people just came. And anyway, and so when I started, we had what I knew was a great purpose, and we had a great product, and we had great people. The three things that I had that was enough. But what I did not have was formal education, had no capital, and I had no business plan.
This is something we talk a lot about when people have like their idea for their business in our company. And like you think of something, people think of their ideas not with enough, I don't know what the word is, esteem maybe. Like, you had a pretzel. Like a lot of people would just be like, well, that's a pretzel. No, you had a mission. You had the purpose. The pretzel meant something. Like there was love being injected into every one of those like pretzels when they were being cooked, because there was something other than the pretzel that was important on the other side of it. And like that's what if you're an entrepreneur, like you have to have that mission behind the product if you're going to be able to do anything.
Yeah, because without that purpose, the mission for us was to be light, salt and light in the world of business, and it was also the purpose was to give. So it was a twofold purpose. And if you don't have the purpose, it's just too hard.
I know
to do business without a reason. What's the why behind what you're doing?
Because the bad days, when they get bad, it becomes like a job.
Absolutely.
But when the bad day, you have a mission, you're like, this is what God gave me, my purpose. So I got to go do the thing, right? Yep.
And and you're so right, because every time I was done, so we went from one store to two the first year, and then 12 the next year. And the following year we did 35 stores, and the next year was 50 to 55. So from day one, it was a fast growth for me, and never having owned a business, not
learning on the fly a little bit, were you?
I learned on the fly. Growing up in the Amish culture, I had an 8th grade education, but I had a hard work ethic, and I love people, and I had a purpose. I'm telling you.
How did you get the capital? Like you had no capital, and so you go from a farmer's market, cooking out of your house, 1 store, 2 store, 12 stores. Like, where did you get your initial capital? Where did you get the money to buy ovens or whatever? Like, did you go straight to malls, or did you just buy any space you could get, or like what happened? Like, where'd you get the capital first? I guess that's the first question.
Well, so what we figured out was, so within 6 months we had our second store built, and by that time, at the end of the first year, we were doing probably between these two stores, we were probably doing maybe around 200,000 a year.
Whoa!
It was Shane. It was unbelievable. I'd never seen that much money in my life. It was
no one teaches you you're allowed to make that much money growing up.
Exactly.
So why would you?
But what I knew from day one, I told Jonas, I don't know what's happening here. It was the two stores that first year were unbelievable. And so what I did was, actually, it was a cash business, right? And at the end of every Saturday night, a farmer's market was a 3-day market, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. At the end of Saturday night, I would count my money at the kitchen table, and I would do 3 stacks. I called it the 3-stack system. Okay, that's all I knew. And so one stack was the 10% off of the whatever $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 we made. I took that to church, and the next stack was for taxes. I figured 30% at that back in the day, and I put that in a separate account. And then I knew that the rest was working capital and personal. We could use for our personal expenses. So that's what I did for the first probably 2 years, because I didn't trust myself with all the cash. I didn't trust. And I knew I had to do that immediately, or I would have just tipped in the tail and went and bought a dress, or, went shopping, but I never did that because.
Or not saved for taxes. And then
exactly.
My dad was he was an insurance agent. And so when we started our business, I kind of knew you were supposed to save for taxes, but I realized it wasn't 30% off the gross eventually. You know what I mean? Yeah. And it works a little different, but I realized I did have to save for taxes, because that's kind of the only thing that can stop you, really, is if you don't pay the government. Anything else you can figure out, but if the government comes and you don't have it, you got problems in your business, right?
Exactly. And we somehow feel like we can get around that maybe, or something. I don't know, like nobody will notice, whatever. But it really is. And I somehow innately, I knew that. I'm not sure why I knew that. I don't know, but I never wanted to pay taxes. Oh, that was always
well, the Bible does say, give unto Caesar what is Caesar's, and give unto the Lord's what is Lord's. So that's 2 of your stacks, Anne, right there.
And that's
right?
what I knew. That's what I knew, Shane. And that's what I knew I had to do as unto the Lord. That's right. So it's what we did. And somehow that worked. And then the other income was within the first year, we had so many, the product was wildly successful. We had people come from miles, standing in line, like 20, 30, 40 people a night. No kidding. It was so bad that there were days when I went to work, I actually rolled pretzels, looked at the line. I was so, I wanted to get it out. I wanted to serve our people well. That was my thing. I wanted to serve my people well, and I wanted every customer to be happy. I didn't want them to wait for 10 minutes for a product. So I'm rolling pretzels, and I'm a crier. So I'm rolling pretzels with my head down, and often standing there crying, like, how can we do this better? How can we get the product to the people so that they can have a great experience and not have to wait so long? So we figured all of that out. And, the first year, the 2 stores maximized me to the limit. I'm like, so at one point I told Jonas, and we had many people come to us at that time because they would taste the product and they're like, I want to take Auntie Anne's pretzels to my kids' football or baseball or to the church function. And I kept saying no, because I didn't want you to have anything but a fresh, hot, hand-rolled soft pretzel out of the oven from the store. And every pretzel, like you said earlier, it was rolled with love. That is our secret ingredient, I'm telling you. So just so now people always wonder, what's your secret ingredient in the pretzel? I say every pretzel is rolled with love. That's what
that pretzel with the love and the cinnamon is really good. I'm telling you, there's 2 secret ingredients in that one. So.
Absolutely. So anyway, we went from there and just worked our little buns off, and all we could think of, you sleep, you eat, you drink, you talk, you dream. Your business. If you're an entrepreneur, you really can't get away from it. And so during the first year, we had lots of people would come to us and say, how can we do this? And one day, one of my brothers came and said, Anne, I want to do a store at another market. And I'm like, well, how are we going to do that? I said, how? He said, well, I want to use your name and I want to use your recipe. And I know nothing about franchising, nothing, zero. I said, well, if you want to use my name and the recipe, and we'll help you build the store. At that time, we would get used equipment and we'd fix up an old store and make it look good, paint it and clean it up. Because I was always about, clean. I was always
clean and consistent from store to store.
Yes. Yeah. So we talked about it and I said, well, Merle, if that's what you want to do, then why don't we'll do that. We'll set it up for you. And so we'll call it an upfront fee, which was $2,500. And I asked him, is that fair? And he said, yeah, I think so. So we wrote on a piece of paper, 2,500. I don't have that paper. I wish I would.
Oh, yeah. That would be an awesome little framed thing in your desk. I
had no idea. You know what I mean? And I said, and if you're going to use my name and the recipe, then I think that we should have a percentage of your total gross sales. And he said, sure, why not? So we started at 4%. And that's how we started.
Wow.
We built the store. He gave us $2,500. That was enough. Almost enough to actually, build it, because my husband did all the building. He built every store for the first 15 stores.
Wow.
And we didn't know then that we were that's the model of franchising.
Yeah. Which has other taxing implications that you might have to learn about eventually.
I'm telling you, if I would have known, I don't know if I would ever started, because many days I would say to Jonas, hon, all I want to do is sell pretzels. I mean, and it got so, complicated, just the regulations of franchising. 2 years later, we came up with an agreement. I had a little first year, then we actually came up with we called it licensing agreement. It was 10 pages. And I'm like, oh, that's too much. I'm crying my way out of the attorney's office. Like, hon, this is too complicated. After 2 years, we went to a franchise consulting company in Chicago. And long story there. It's in my book, Overcome and Lead. And I said to them then, guys, listen, here I am. I'm still, this little Amish girl inside of me never left me. And she's still inside of me. We've really enjoyed our ride together, but back in the day, I'm in Chicago with these an amazing offices. And it's like way beyond anything that I'd ever been to, Yeah. And I said, hey, listen, guys, can you please just keep this simple? Let's not make it too complicated. They said, well, franchising is quite complicated, but okay, we'll see what we can do. They came back with 225 pages.
Oh my gosh. They get paid by the word, So
I never read it word for word, but
the story's crazy because it's hilarious because so I don't know if you know this, but I'm from a little town in Southeast Kentucky called Corbin. Okay. And we're like the gateway to the Appalachian Mountains, right? We're right at the foothills. And Colonel Sanders opened the first Kentucky Fried Chicken in this town. And so we have a statue of Colonel Sanders built in the middle of our town, right? So but awesome. It's funny, but I've always grown up learning about his story, right? Because he's such a legend around here. And it sounds so similar to this. Like he just started cooking for his reason and everybody loved it. And then somebody wanted to sell it. And then it's just stumbling forward into all this greatness. And I think every entrepreneur I've ever met has a similar story to this. You just stumble. People think you got to go get a degree or you figure it out by doing it. You just figure it out. Every entrepreneur has to fall forward and just get back up a little scooting ahead. Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I love that. I love that. This is you're just open another store. You get a store, $2,500. Why not? And then all of a sudden you're in a lawyer's office in Chicago making franchise contracts. It's crazy.
It's just crazy. And you talk about obstacles. Holy cow, man. Yeah. Every single day I walked into my office, every obstacle that I faced was so monumental
and totally foreign at
completely
the same time. Yeah.
I knew. So when I say I knew nothing, I didn't. But as I worked, as I kept building, I learned more every single day. And what I learned is that when I faced an obstacle, my purpose, I would always come back to my purpose, and I would tell Jonas, "Hon, I can't do this anymore." I mean, in tears, I cannot do this anymore. And now I'm visiting, and I always went to every store that was open. I did the training initially, and of course, over time, the training was done by others. But initially, the first 15, 20 stores, I went to train. I wanted to see the employees. I wanted to hang out with them and get to know my people. Yeah. And, over time, I'm exhausted. And over time, I'm like, I cannot do this anymore. And so I would tell Jonas, I can't do this anymore. And he said, hun, you just do what's in front of you. You always take that step. When you do something, when you do what you don't feel like doing, then you will know more. And so I kept discovering. It's a journey of discovery.
Just turning over rocks everywhere. Where's the money? Where's my freedom? Where's the passion? Where's my purpose? Okay, this rock? Nope, not that one. Right.
It was unbelievable. And the satisfaction, Shane, then became, oh my goodness, I can do more than I ever thought I could do. And after a few years, we had 100, 200 stores. And I remember Jonas at one point, he said, you were trying to hold on to, a few stores and finally he said, hun, why don't we just give this to God and just tell him he can do whatever he wants with Auntie Anne's. And why don't we just get out of the way and see what he wants to do? So what I know today, Shane, looking back, is crystal clear. It's clear. You can see where God met you in those moments of the crossroad. Like, I want to quit. And somehow you kept going. But now as I look back, I just see those moments so clearly. And it's all written in my book. And
that's amazing.
It's a crazy, amazing story. And we went from just his one store. And when we sold the company in 2005, we had about 900 locations. And today, Auntie Anne's is probably around 2,000. I think COVID, they shut some stores down and there was some, so I don't stay in touch with all the details.
My favorite one is this, which airport is it in Florida? I can't remember exactly which one, but there's this one airport right when you go into security. It's like a beacon of hope, a little island sitting there, awesome. Like waiting for you. And you're like, give me the pretzel dog right now. I want the pretzel dog. That's amazing. So the franchising scales it. And then what was the moment of, like, Jocelyn and I sold a website one time. We sold our first business, and there were a few like catalysts that kind of made us even think about selling it. Like, someone told us we could sell it. Someone told us we could remove ourselves from the business if we wanted to. Jocelyn had not, it was called elementarylibrarian.com, and she had not been a librarian for like 4 or 5 years. So she felt like she was getting removed from the classroom and didn't feel comfortable leading it and stuff. Like, what was the moment where you were like, I think I could sell this? Like, did someone approach you? Did you guys pray about it and God kind of just told you, hey, I think you need to move to the next chapter? Like, what brought that on of just selling? When did you know it was right, the time to sell?
Well, you would know what it's like to start a company. It's like you're birthing a baby, which you don't realize that. And it goes through the baby stage, the adolescence, teenage stage. I mean, it just goes, it grows. And with every growth, you experience something new with your people. And I just loved my people, and they felt like family. And we really were one big family. And what really changed it all for me, because I honestly thought I would be Auntie Anne till the day I die. And I thought on my tombstone, they would just say, Auntie Anne, here she lies.
A pretzel shaped
and put a gold pretzel
right.
on the tombstone, whatever. Right. And never thought that we would ever sell. And so I was on the board at that time with a counseling center out of Akron, Ohio. And at that time, the founder of the counseling center he had birthed it, and he had grown it to he was known worldwide. And at that particular, when I got on the board, he was wanting to resign and try to find someone to fill his space. I watched for about a year on this board meeting. Every meeting, it was, the agony of him trying to let go and the employees trying to let go. It was eye-opening for me, and I'd never experienced that before. And I remember one day, Jonas picked me up, and I sat in the car and I said, "Hun, I can tell you right now, I am not going to be 75 and still be Auntie Anne." He looked at me. That was the first time I ever breathed anything about not being Auntie Anne, or ever said it. Never thought about it. And he said, "Wow, how old do you want to be?"
Good question.
And he said 70, and I said, "Wow, I don't think so." And he said, "Well, 65." I said, "Well, now that's a stretch, but I don't know." And he said, "What about 60?" I said, "Wow, okay, yeah, that sounds about right." At the time, I was 56.
Oh, so within striking distance of the
exactly.
final number,
said,
right?
That's right. And he said it that, right? This was the conversation. And he said to me, "Well, if you want to if you want to be out of Auntie Anne's by the time you're 60, you need to start thinking about it right now. And I'm like, oh, no. I mean, like, no, that's not what I mean. I'm just saying, we're just talking, and I just immediately pushed it aside. But we began to think about it, and we began to pray about it. And we started meeting with people at that time, just consulting about the possibilities. And so sure enough, by the time I was 58, we sold the company. And
wow,
listen, Shane, you have to know when the right time is. And I kept feeling, I'm so glad Psalms 32:8 is my verse. God told me early on at Auntie Anne's, I will instruct you. I will teach you. I will teach you in the way you should go. And I will counsel you with my eye. And let me tell you, that is the greatest promise. And God stood true to his promise every step of the way. And when we began to talk to him about this, it's kind of like I heard him just reassure me, it's okay. Wow. If you want to sell the company, it's okay. I have other things for you to do. Well, it was stunning. If
anybody has heard you on stage speak, I know God is using you in a really mighty way, and he had big plans for you back then. So that is, and your story is incredible. I could talk to you for hours. I mean, Joss and I, as soon as we met you for the first time, we were like, I just love her. She just seems like somebody lived down the street here in Kentucky and just come on over for dinner, right?
Hey, so
yeah, your story is incredible. Tell everybody, as we kind of wrap up here, where can they go to learn more about your story, and where can they connect with you and see all the amazing things that you're doing online? And we'll put links to all this stuff in the show notes.
Sure. Just go to auntiannebeiler.com and into my website, and that will then take you to our store. If you want a signed copy of our book, we can actually do that for you and get it sent to you, or you can always get the book on Amazon. But if you want to know anything about me, you just simply go to auntiannebeiler.com.
Awesome stuff. And Joss and I, we're on your podcast, so we'll definitely put some links back to that as well. And thank you so much for being here today.
It was my greatest honor, and look forward to seeing you again at one of the Life Search events. Thank you so much.
All right, y'all. That wraps up my interview with Anne Beiler. I highly recommend that you check out her books. I mean, you've got to read the entire story behind her rise as an entrepreneur and all the things that she has went through in her life. And hey, you're already listening to a podcast. Look up Auntie Anne's podcast as well. My wife, Joss, and I have been interviewed on the show. We'll put some links in the show notes if you need a little help finding it. But she does a great job interviewing people who have overcome great obstacles. It's a super inspirational podcast, and I think you should go listen to it. Also, don't forget, this podcast is brought to you by flippedlifestyle.com. That is the place where you can learn how to start, build, and grow an online business of your own. Hey, you can become an entrepreneur just like me, just like Auntie Anne. You have an idea, you have a purpose, you have a passion, you have a mission deep inside your heart, and you need to let that out in the world. And there has never been a better time to do it. The internet lets you make your entire living from home. After all you need is 100 people to pay you $50 a month to make $60,000 a year, 200 to make six figures, 120,000. There's 7 billion people on this planet. You only need 100 to 200 of them to build the life of your dream. Online business changed our family's future, and I know it can change yours too. And you can learn how to start, build, and grow your own online business at Flipped Lifestyle as well. Over at Flipped Lifestyle, we have an incredible membership community where you can interact with hundreds of family-focused entrepreneurs from around the world. We have a training specifically designed to get you started and help you build your business. It's called the Flipped Lifestyle Experience, and we have tons of resources there that can help you succeed. We've had thousands of people come through our community, and we want you to be a part of it too. We are so confident in our program over at Flipped Lifestyle that we will let you try it for free for 30 days. All you have to do is go to flippedlifestyle.com/free. That's FLIPPED lifestyle.com/free. And you can take your first steps toward entrepreneurship, just like Anne did when she stepped into that farmer's market. Just like me and my wife Jocelyn did when we started our first online business. Just like thousands of other people have done inside of our Flipped Lifestyle membership. We believe that you have a great idea and that you can do it too. Head over to flippedlifestyle.com/free and start your entrepreneurship journey today. All right, y'all, that is all the time I have for this week's Shane Sam Show. Thank you for listening. Until next time, whatever you choose to do, be consistent, Be prolific. Be relentless. Pick your stone up off the ground, cast it out upon the waters, and cause many ripples. I'll see you next time.